What's up, everyone? Matt Gajewski here, back again talking college basketball. It is April the 2nd, and we have a doubleheader in the crown. Thankfully, we've seen all of these teams play one game, so we have a better idea who is going to be out there. But before we get started, thank you to anyone that has supported the channel. We just crossed 1,000 subscribers. I very much thank you for that, and anyone who's dropped a like, left a comment. All that helps a lot, especially the comments for those of you talking about my dead eyes. I promise we're just locked in to the note sheet, to the data as we get into this. One recap note on the crown yesterday, we saw the games play a little bit slower than the first day. 3 games went under. They were still played pretty fast with some pretty bad defense. We just saw a blanket increase in totals, at least what bookmakers were listing across the board. So perhaps they adjusted a little bit too far in that. Little more interested in the unders now. We'll talk about what we played and what we haven't, but let's dive right in. If you or someone you know has a gambling problem, please call or text 1-800-GAMBLER. You must be 21 or older to play. Butler takes on Boise State. This game has a spread of 7 points in favor of Boise State. The total is 155. Injuries, absences. The only main one in this game is Jameel Telford, and it's kind of a theme as we move forward in the crown. The teams that are trying harder are advancing. Shocking. But Butler's still down their best player. They are 75th overall. To get here, they beat Utah, who was 76th, and that was a crazy come-from-behind win. They end up with a final score of 86-84. At the end of the game, they ended up with better shooting percentages and out-rebounding Utah, who was at full strength, surprisingly, considering everyone's in the portal. And Utah's a large team. So Butler was able to get it done on the glass and then shoot the ball well, even without their best player. On the season, they went 3-13 against the top 50. Best wins against Northwestern and Mississippi State. They did lose to Austin Peay and North Dakota, so those are a little concerning on the low end. But this is a team that still can play with some of the better teams in the country at their best. On the Boise State side, they are 47th overall. They absolutely crushed George Washington to open the crown, who came in ranked 128th. Boise State won by 30 points. 89-59. They out-rebounded George Washington 41-30, but the main difference in the game was points off turnovers. Boise State forced George Washington into 22 turnovers, which was very uncharacteristic for George Washington. But that's how you get such a lopsided victory. George Washington tried for the most part, too. They did not have a lot of absences. But Boise State has 0. They have a few very deep rotational players in the portal. Nothing that's going to affect their main rotation. Overall, they went 4-4 against the top 50. They beat Clemson, St. Mary's, and New Mexico a pair of times. Their worst losses came to Boston College and Washington State, so not anything horrific. And then overall, the Mountain West is probably your biggest concern. This is a conference that didn't have the best showing in the tournament. They ended up with a pair of wins. New Mexico looked decent, but overall, they all got eliminated pretty early. And Boise State couldn't make the tournament out of that group. So it's hard to really parse the Mountain West and their strength of schedule. A lot of their best wins came against each other. With Boise, at least they beat Clemson and St. Mary's, so there's that to hang your hat on. Overall, this game projects to be played at a relatively slow pace. Butler's 179th in tempo. Boise is 286th. As far as recent play goes, Butler did jump to 109th in conference play, but Boise State remained parked right around that sub 275 rank. They're a slow team. It just is the fact of the matter. As far as effective height goes, some of the size metrics, Butler is 19th in effective height, 176th in rebounding. Boise State's a shorter team at 183rd, but they are 9th in rebounding. Butler did have to play a smaller lineup with Telford out. He's 6'7", and he typically plays one of those wing positions, but they're still going to be taller than Boise. With that said, we've seen Boise out-rebound larger teams really throughout their season. So I still think this is an edge for Boise. I'm not really super concerned with the rebounding metrics in this game, even though Butler is tall. Butler's been a bad rebounding team despite being tall the entire season as well. Shooting-wise, Butler is 80th in effective field goal percent, 147th inside and 44th from 3. This is actually a pretty good three-point shooting team. Finley Bizjack and Pat McCaffrey are both hitting over 40% of their threes. In their last game, they started Evan Haywood, who's a freshman. He showed some promise. He went 3 of 7 from 3 before he almost fouled out. So that was at least solid. You know that you actually have someone off the bench that might be a decent three-point shooter. Boise State is 57th in total defense, 87th inside, 204th defending the perimeter. So the best path is shooting the ball over the top, which is exactly what Butler is best at. For Boise State, they are 108th in effective field goal percent, 26th in two-point percent, 318th from three. They do shoot a lot of threes. They're 79th in three-point rate. That number has increased since conference play and jumped even further since February. They're just not very good at it. So luckily, this team is good on the boards. They're able to clean up a lot of their missed three-pointers. And they do have some solid players on the interior. Tyson Dagenhart is good at the rim. But you're still looking at no one on this team shooting above 34% from three. It's why you do see some streaky results from Boise State. They just can't shoot as well as a lot of other teams in the country. Butler is 145th in total defense, 181st inside, and 46th defending the perimeter. Boise's better at scoring at the rim. Part of that is just they're awesome on the boards, and when you are good on offensive boards, it leads to easy putback opportunities or fouls. Butler's weak inside. So maybe you take a little less threes, you force the ball into the paint if you're Boise State. I don't have a lot of confidence they take this approach. They've done it rarely this season, but it is at least a path to victory, and it kind of comes two ways. They can board or just force the ball inside. Turnovers, neither team really turns the ball over much. Boise can't struggle with fouls. They're 185th in fouls committed. Butler is 66th in fouls generated. Part of that's just playing a large lineup. But when you get these teams in the free throw line, Boise State still outranks Butler 20 to 110. Neither team's really bad at free throws, but it's at least worth mentioning there. The best play in this game to us is the under 155. This is one I did play ahead of time. We're making this about 10 points below the projected over-under, which is a little scary, but you look at the first couple games for these teams. Butler, this is probably what worries me the most. This team has played fast at times. They're dealing with a weaker rotation, so that is something to mention. And they played a Utah team that really had no interest in playing defense with everyone in the portal. So I don't know what to make of that first game. Boise State is slow, and if George Washington doesn't turn the ball over 22 times, you're probably looking at an under in that game. If you're looking at a side, I think it is probably the Butler side for me. They're only down one rotational player. We make this about -4 if you put Telfort in the lineup. So is Telfort worth 4 points to the spread? I would argue against that. But before we move on, we do have a Discord projecting every side in total for every game. We also have player props, points, rebounds, assists, steals, blocks, minutes. If you're interested in that, it is in the Discord listed below in the description. No long-term commitments. You can jump in for a week or a month, both very affordable. Thank you if you've already done that. We'll keep it short as the tournament's basically ending. Second game. Nebraska takes on Georgetown. This game has an 8-point spread in favor of the Cornhuskers, a 153.5 total. Georgetown messed around and found out. They tried to lose their first game, and they accidentally won. Washington State tried harder to lose. They did not play with Drew Fielder, Thomas Sorber, Micah Peavy, and Jaden Epps. Yes, that is 4 starters down for Georgetown. Nebraska didn't have Raleigh Worcester. He's a solid contributor and a starter. It's still a Nebraska team far more intact than Georgetown at this point. Starting with the Nebraska side, they're 49th overall. They missed the Big Ten tournament. Still made the crown, though. To open, they beat Arizona State 86-78. Not too much to really say about that. Arizona State didn't have Quaintance, Freeman, or Sannon. Overall, the regular season, Nebraska did go 7-8 against the top 50. 2 solid wins against UCLA and Illinois in the top 25. Worst losses were to Iowa a pair of times in Minnesota. Overall, it's a pretty good body of work for Nebraska. You could argue this is the strongest team in the crown. They were basically right on the cusp of NCAA tournament eligibility until they lost 5 games in a row to end their regular season. This was a team that was routinely projected in the field until the latter half of February and then early March. So it's a solid team that just faltered a little bit of late. Georgetown is 86th, really never approached the NCAA tournament. They won the first game of the crown against Washington State. Neither team had a lot of guys in that game, so it was just a wild back and forth 82-85 game. But Georgetown, much weaker body work. They went 2-8 against the top 50. Beat Creighton and Xavier on the high end, but no one higher than 35. Lost to DePaul 3 times outside the top 100. Lost to Notre Dame at 97. And now you're dealing with so many absences for this team. All right, let's try to do these metrics. Nebraska is 55th in effective height, 207th in rebounding. Georgetown is 29th in effective height, 135th in rebounding. And they lost a lot of tall players. We're talking like Fielder's their center, Sorber's a tall player, PV's above 6'6", Epps is their point guard, so he's not as large. But their replacements actually do have some size. Curtis Williams is 6'6", Caleb Williams is 6'7", Jordan Burks is 6'9", Drew McKenna is 6'8". Even Austin Montgomery had to play over 10 minutes in the last game. He's 6'6". So you have some size out there. The only real question with this is you worry about efficiency. They were 135th in rebounding. Nebraska's 207. Do you see that gap narrow? I think the answer is probably yes, just because these players are very inexperienced and you're going up against Bryce Williams and Juwan Gary, some of the better players, veteran players that, I mean, a lot of these guys are freshmen and young players. They just haven't seen guys like Gary and Bryce Williams who are literally grown men playing the game. This game does project for a decent tempo. Nebraska's 161st in pace. Georgetown's 122nd. The only real difference is Nebraska's sped up a little bit since conference. They jumped to 141st, but still pretty modest pace. Georgetown's remained constant. Shooting-wise, we can do a lot more with Nebraska compared to Georgetown at this point. They're 135th in effective field goal, 89th in two-point percent, 238th in three-point percent. They have a couple shooters. Bryce Williams is at 36% from three. Connor Essegian off the bench is at 38%. And we just don't know what Georgetown defense is going to look like. Overall, through the year, they were 65th, but they're now down three of their top four defenders. And Sorber is like far and away their best defender. He's been out for a while now. But I mean, skeleton crew on defense, they were already 175th defending the perimeter, 86th inside. There should be openings for Nebraska to score. On the Georgetown side, this team already couldn't shoot. They were 198th in effective field goal, 134th inside, 272nd from three. They just lost their best shooter, Micah Peavy. He was a 40% three-point shooter. Currently, their best shooter is Malik Mack. He hits 35% of his threes, which was boosted because he had an absolute flamethrower of a game against Washington State. He went 8 of 12 from three. If he doesn't do that, they lose that game. They went 5 of 24 from the outside on shots that weren't his. I mean, what a crazy hero performance from Malik Mack. He's their only starter still in the lineup. Nebraska's 51st in total defense, 158th inside, 192nd defending the perimeter. And they at least have most of their rosters. I mean, it's just very hard to give any sort of advantage Georgetown's way. We don't know how good Curtis Williams, Caleb Williams, Jordan Burks, Drew McKenna are. Turnovers and fouls don't project to play a major role in this game. Georgetown does commit more turnovers. Luckily, their lone returning starter for this game is their point guard, so they should be okay there. Obviously, with the foul stuff, you're concerned with depth, especially for Georgetown. And you're playing young players. They typically get in foul trouble a little more often. If you're putting Nebraska at the line a lot, this is an advantage for the Cornhuskers. They're 86th in free throw percent. Georgetown is 240th. So right now, we do make this slightly in favor of Nebraska. I think you could play them on the spread. All of this injury stuff is already factored into the number, which is an inexact science because there's so many new players. I think you could argue Nebraska should be favored by more. We do lean under in this game, 153.5. And honestly, if you didn't see Micah Peavy flamethrower from three, you're probably looking at an under in Georgetown's first game too. They did give up 80 points. So, I mean, Nebraska is probably going to be looking at something similar to that. I think the over-under comes down to what does Georgetown give you? And without all the starters, I would be hesitant to back them or the over, which brings this to just a lean at this point. Some money likely will come in on the over, so maybe we end up taking an under later in the day. That'll be a Discord. Might also play Nebraska, but that is where we stand at the moment. Thank you guys for watching. Final Four video should be up later today, and we will continue covering the Crown and the NIT as we get to the championships of both. But until next time, good luck. Thank you for watching.